on numerous classified and established film genres, models, and modes, Baraka seems to be a problem because it is deemed as unclassifiable. While this might be a problem for the system, it shows how revolutionary the film was. If analyzed based on two kinds of documentary that was identified by Nichols, which are historiographic and ethnographic, Baraka is unable to be put in either of them, and identify itself as a nature documentary. Among numerous of critical praises, the film was seen to exceed the boundaries of film itself. This is because the film has established itself by not trying to obey the boundaries and classification that was set up and studied. Due to this, the film is a perfect example of how film movements, as a part of art movements, are born, which are as experiments, and to become different. This visual essay is aiming to provide discussion regarding the echoing characteristics of various film movements in the poetic documentary mode of Baraka, which hopefully gives a new perspective in analyzing the film. Poetry is defined as a literary piece which expresses feelings serving ideas in certain intensity by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Based on this definition of poetry, the poetic mode of documentaries can be understood as a visual piece that stresses on triggering emotion on their audiences using distinctive style and rhythm. In filmmaking, this distinctive style and rhythm are achieved through various cinematic tools such as camera movement, sound, editing, and more. This was concluded by Nichols, who defined the poetic mode as a distinct cinematic mode which consists of sounds and images that are selected and arranged in a particular way using specifically cinematic techniques and convention. The mode aims to cater as an alternative form of knowledge platform to the straightforward kinds of information argument of point of view. This is not the first time a genre was formed due to their wish to be different. In fact, it might be one of the leading factors why there are different kinds of film delivering different kinds of visual experience. The urge of experimenting is a big part of creating art pieces, and the most influential art movement that are responsible of this is modernist avant-garde. This means non-traditional aesthetic innovation that are experimental, radical, or unorthodox at the time, while remaining respectful towards the art, culture, and society where the art is a part of or representing. This artistic movement aimed to experiment and push artists to think outside of the box, regardless of the technical norm or what is expected of their cultural products. This movement is a part of a wider movement that had been sweeping the world since the beginning of the 20th century, modernism. Modernism focuses on a thought of being aware of the changes in literary and social traditions, which could lead to artistic creative explorations in the form of paintings, poems, architecture, and of course, film movements. The spirit of modernist avant-garde seems to reflect film movement's poetic documentary mode as well as Baraka itself. The artistic movement provided insights for filmmakers as artists to do things differently and to challenge the norm, whether it is in terms of ideas, technicalities, point of view, and basically everything about their art. This was how art movements were born and evolved into what became Baraka. A film movement is a wave of filmmaking era, which consists of films that apply particular cinematic trends based on particular influences such as political movements, pop culture, or other factors. These movements have various characteristics which were gained from experimental explorations that are used to create innovative film styles, giving them unique identity. Film movements may influence other film movements, and it is a gradual, continuous process from time to time. This innovative evolution of filmmaking have been a big part in the way the media is used in the past, present, and future. Baraka is the perfect example of this and why it is seen as groundbreaking. Soviet montage is one of the first film movements the world's seen. It happened in early 20th century, right after the rise of the Soviet Union, which means it was only a couple of decades after the first public screening of cinema in 1895. The movement was inspired by the rising socialist ideology that changed the nation's history, and one of the first time that cinema was used as a tool to evoke emotion from the audience. Association between two images between each other is an important part of the movement, and this association is linked together with editing in order to get a certain point across to construct an idea and emotion. This notion was stressed by one of the founding fathers of the movement, Sergei Eisenstein. When organic unity is realized, one can observe a real pathos. Main ideas of Soviet montage made their way to the poetic mode in Baraka. The poetic mode in general explores association and patterns that involve temporal rhythm and spatial juxtapositions. The mode, along with Baraka, proved that the Soviet montage theory of image association does indeed work to build mood and tone, which aim to portray visual experience and emotional effect. With this, audiences can get kidnapped and taken to the world that is represented on the screen, which is what Baraka aimed. The film's non-linear narration is presented radically yet successfully through collage structure, jump cutting from one place to another. This narration is told solely visual, leaving room for audience to interpret what the message of the film is. This influence that the Soviet montage movement had on Baraka can be seen in the similarity between Frick and one of the movement's notable filmmaker Vertov. Both of these filmmakers use their camera as a tool of filmmaking, which film is considered as a catalyst that represent a few of their subjects' everyday life. While Vertov's style were used to promote certain political agenda that was a big part of the movement itself, Frick seemed to aim mostly on telling his message about the world, but also giving a room for ambiguity. They both have shared fascination with speed, repetitive motion of machineries, rapid motion of vehicles through space, and attention to flows of all kinds. In Baraka, there are plenty of scenes dedicated to movements, whether it is crowd moving train stations, cigarette workers, waterfall, factories, and many more. Both filmmakers also seem to utilize not only their camera but all aspects of filmmaking technology that are at their disposal. Vertov used many techniques that were seen as revolutionary during the time. He used reconstruction of time and images with slow motion, freeze frame, reverse, split screen, superimposed images, and more. Frick seems to take this approach as well, and add another layer due to his advantage of living in the 21st century. He used slow and accelerated motion, adds in computer-controlled time-lapse, as well as aerial shot camera angle. The notion of using as much as filmmaking tools in one's disposal to build a narration is also a big part of film movements that emerged after Soviet montage. Interestingly, one of the most well-known film movement, French New Wave, also can be seen as one of the film movements that gave influence to poetic mode of Baraka. In French New Wave, art is not only about entertaining the audience, but rather to make them jolted into awareness, making them think. The movement's aim is to break from the filmic experience to evoke thought into their audience mind, instead of making them feel comfortable. With this, they are known for jump cuts, rapid editing, on-location shooting, natural lighting, mobile camera, and long takes among other things. In relation to the poetic mode, which also aimed to be alternative platform to the straightforward form of narration, both French New Wave and the documentary mode stress on giving a certain visual experience. While French New Wave filmmakers built pathos by disrupting their audience's cinematic experience, Baraka convinced them to be a part of the experience, guided through their editing techniques, realizing them that the film is indeed not a part of their actual reality. The film built their narration with stylish characteristics that are similar to those of French New Wave, while also tweaking some others to work them through the story and giving the best visual experience possible for its audience. For example of their correlation, Baraka borrowed some of the elements of French New Wave in their way of portraying reality in a certain way, with the use of non-professional actors. All of the subjects that are shown in Baraka are non-professional actors, like the Japanese schoolgirls, the Indonesian cigarette laborers, and the monks. The other film movement that perhaps can help understanding the poetic mode of Baraka along with their impact upon the world is third cinema. The word third in third cinema refers to third world nation and focusing on the impact of colonialism especially. The movement takes a different approach to filmmaking yet remaining similar to film movements mentioned, still using their style and techniques to get audience to think, to fight passive film watching experience. The movement aim is to present the realities of third world nation as they are, in order to educate the viewing public and to encourage dialogue about alternative visions of the past, present, and future. This movement is useful in seeing film as more than just an entertainment or in technical sense, and looking at them as a cultural product that has relation to other aspects. Baraka seems to be seen as dark cinema due to its focus on their subjects. However, the film focuses on the aesthetic and emotional impact of its subjects rather than the global, political, or economic conditions. This is different than the general third cinema that often provoke these conversations. Baraka seems to evoke these thoughts yet remain ambiguous due to the lack of dialogue and clear narration. While the film still stayed true in providing global imagery in Euro-American commercial cinema, the depictions still feel like a voyeuristic result. It seems that the film depicts this exotic world of bizarre rituals and cultural practices that makes them feel like they're circus performers. With this, as much as how the film promotes how close and related the world is, it is still not a part of a particular Western audience. In a sense, as much as it seems like everyone is the same, most of this audience might still see these humans as beings that are different than them. The Bounaries fire dance scene is one of the scenes that depicted which shows a somewhat primordial ceremony that might not seem familiar to most audiences, especially Western ones. The performance involved ancient Bounaries chanting and was originally supposed to be a traditional ceremony that is now turned into a theater. This performance can be seen as a representation of Baraka as a film and how it is perceived by its audience. While the purpose was to tell a story and to send a certain message, they are ambiguous enough for audience to disregard and ignore. They are seen more as exotic entertainment, presenting foreign cultural knowledge. By mentioning these art and film movements does not mean that Baraka is exclusively influenced by them alone, but rather mean that these influences make their way to the film as a radical new piece that defines itself with nature as their theme. By this, the film provides a different context to the often political influence movements and simply applying them to nature documentary, which has rarely been done in the past. And while the ambiguity of the initial message of the film can easily be debated among audiences, the film provides universal equality for everyone, not limited to English-speaking audiences. The ambiguity and all the correlating influence also give the film its uniqueness, therefore making it hard to be classified into a particular kind of documentary. It breaks the rule in order to get its ideas across, while making sure that they kidnap their audience into their world, making them think by themselves, while giving them a guide through editing and music. It is an innovative result of film movements and representation of poetic documentary mode.